Okay. Alba, Alba, es podria apagar el llum? Aquest llum, potser? Igual la liem o què? Ànimo. Millor, no? Molt bé, molt bé. Has tallat el cable del color correcte. Ah, no pilla. Vale. ¿Se lee bien así? Vale, pues venga, va. Muy bien. Venga, empezamos pues. Okay, I will switch to English. All right, so yeah, so as many of you, I've been programming for some years, and you know, and I've read a lot of source code, either in open source or in consultancy, or whatever, and and with time you develop like a sense of what is like good code or idiomatic code or quality code. Sometimes in in higher levels like the architecture or I don't know how it is organized, or I don't know, design, interfaces. There's a lot of stuff that you can see in code, but sometimes you look at those tiny details that also have some importance, and this talk is about those little details. And it is a talk where all the snippets that I am going to show you are real, okay? So either from open source or from client code, not mentioning anyone, doesn't matter, but they are all real, so not made up, okay? And there's going to be opinions in this talk, and I would like to make a preface about opinions, which is this observation, which is that explaining why you prefer something is different from proving that something is the best choice. And often in discussions, we mix both things, okay? So we argue in a way that says, since I believe A, B, and C, from that follows that we should do this. And that's flawed. That's flawed because that's shaped by your background, the way you see things, your values, your trade-offs, and those depend on each person. So life is not an axiomatic system. So I have my trade-offs, but the other guy has other trade-offs, other preferences. So we do not have the same baseline. So my argument is, given my background, given my trade-offs, this is what I prefer because of this, this baseline. But given the trade-offs or preferences of that other guy, the conclusion is different, okay? So there's a lot of personal stuff in that kind of thing, and I'm going to show you an example. Do you see this dim thing? Okay, okay. So there's going to be two versions here. All right, we have a hash. This talk is about Ruby, so the examples are Ruby, but yes, how many of you know at least a little bit of Ruby? Okay, good, excellent. All right, more than enough. And maybe the fundamentals of the talk do apply to other programming languages, because it's not only about the Ruby details, but it's also a talk where I want to invite you to think about our thought processes. Why do we believe that some code is more readable this way or not, or that kind of thing, okay? So this particular example also applies to Perl, because we have a hash here, and we have the same hash here with one difference. Can you spot it? The last comma. All right. Do you feel some tension here? I mean, some people look at this, yeah. Other people look at this one and say, bad taste. Correct, correct. Okay, so um, so for instance, people that like this option value that there's some symmetry because we have a comma everywhere. May value that if you add something, it's easier because you don't have to go to the line, add a comma. That a div in a patch is cleaner because only if you are adding here, the only line that goes into the patch is the line where you are adding stuff instead of this thing, okay? But there are people that do not see it this way. What they perceive is that there's a missing element here. Their brain parses this and say, it doesn't match their brain, okay? So these arguments in favor of this, they say, I don't care. The patch is cleaner. Why? We are adding a comma. It's fine that the patch has a comma because I am adding a comma, no problem. But for me, it's bad that I see a missing element here. So some people prefer this, some people prefer the other option. Which is the best option? There's no answer to that. It depends on every person, okay? So in your code, you, of course, you choose whatever works better for you, and if you are in a team, so you have to reach a consensus or whatever, okay? Okay, so, when discussing these kinds of things, I believe it's healthy to acknowledge that there's some subjective part of your argument. So, in my opinion, in my experience, that kind of thing helps in putting some perspective in the discussion. And in particular, this entire talk is going to be in my view, all right? So in my view, this and that, and it's always implicit. If I don't say it explicitly, it's always, there's something that colors what I'm going to say, that it's the way I think. Also, I'm going to enable this flag speculation mode, because sometimes I'm going to say, I believe that this is because of this or that, but I'm speculating. But if I enable the flag, I am, allowed to do that, so no problem. Done, okay. All right, so we are going to talk first about concise code. This is a generic definition of conciseness, using few words, not including extra or unnecessary information. Okay, let's see one example. Again, all real code, okay? So here, latest remote equals remote.sort.last. All right. That code is doing something for what we have a word already, which is max. Okay? So the point here is, if you are reading this code, you have to think for a moment that what you really want, so that the result of this is going for the maximum. But if you have the max here, it's like this. So I don't have to think here. I have to think a little bit here, a little bit. But here it's just immediate, okay? So normally it translates to choosing the most specific API. Normally, often it involves less code, often. Often it's more clear. You are applying Occam's razor in the sense that you are expressing yourself concisely. The reader of the code is reading the meaning that is more exact, that translates more directly to the intention you had when you were writing the code. And often you get better performance because the library or the function call or whatever that is doing this, since you are asking specifically about what you want, in general, the implementation is able to do the less work it has to do to give you what you want. For instance, here, sorting and taking the last element is doing too much thing. If you only want the max, you do not need to sort everything. You only need to compute the max. So this is going to be more performant, in addition to be more clear, you know? So normally, and I prefix everything with normally because it's not 100%. Sometimes it is not the case, or sometimes you are more concise but more obscure. You know, not 100%, but it is often the case that this happens. For instance, option keys include page. We have an idiom for that, which is this predicate, okay? This is opening a file to dump all what is in this variable. So it's dumping and closing, all right? There's an idiom right now, which is this one, which is much more concise, precisely. Just write, and it does everything. It does the equivalent of that one. This is in active record, and to my surprise, I see this, you know, quite a little bit out there when I do code reviews or whatever. So this is post where user ID, user.id. I believe that this person is thinking in SQL. Is thinking in SQL, so this translates to a select more or less, where we have a foreign key here, you know, and a where, it translates. But in active record, this is not idiomatic. You do user.posts, and that's the point of the associations API, that you work at the model level, you know, at the entities level, not at this level. Generally speaking, sometimes you have to resort to SQL. It's fine, okay? But most of the time, especially if it's like clear code, the natural thing to write, you write this, not this, okay? Of course, the programmer here has to know what this is going to do. So an ORM, generally speaking, is not a black box. You have, as a programmer, you know the SQL you want, and you use, for doing selects, you use the ORM to generate. For me, an ORM is an SQL generator, basically. Only it allows me to work at a different level, but you have to know what it's going to do, all right? I have not done consultancy in Perl. So when I was into Perl, it was basically, you know, in the company I worked for, and then open source and, you know, and crazy nights. But I have not seen so much diverse code in Perl, so I don't know if this happens in Perl, but in Ruby, you see it. So name here is a string. So this guy is interpolating a string to get a string literal, which no need to do this. If you already have a string, just use the string, okay? And in the case of putS is going to call toS on this thing, which is the same thing that is going to be happening here. But generally, so if we forget about putS, this is redundant. No need to do this. This is calling dynamically on this object, the method that has this name, okay? This is a symbol, and this is a syntax to be able to construct a symbol given an arbitrary identifier, okay? So if you have like a normal identifier, you can write colon and the identifier. Then you have a more generic syntax, which is colon, quotes, and whatever, with spaces and whatever you want, okay? And in particular, you use that if you want to create something dynamic like this. Some people write this way, but the point here is that send accepts strings, so no need to do all these hops, okay? I believe the thing here is that often you write this with a symbol literal, okay? So visually, people are used to see the symbol literal. You just say, for instance, module, send, include is very typical when you are reopening something to inject, I don't know, to active record or whatever, you know? So maybe people are so used to see literal symbols in this kind of calls that maybe they even do not know that send accepts strings. Yes? Okay, I don't remember, but I don't know. Could be. Yeah, right. Okay. Okay. Um, this one is checking if Ruby platform contains Java, okay? Well, this looks very clean, but it's doing like a bunch of stuff. It's doing this is a regular expression. Perhaps the engine optimizes for fixed string. I don't know, for substrings could be optimizing, but if we forget that for a moment, this is building a regular expression. There's going to be a match. There's going to be variables created as side effect, like $, and that kind of thing. And you only want to check if this includes that substring. In Ruby 2.4, there's something that at least does not have side effects. So this predicate is new in 2.4. And in Rails, you can already use it in Rails 5, is emulated in active support. So this one is the same thing here, but there's going to be no side effects in the terms of variables like $1, that kind of thing. And this makes this run like 2-3 times faster than this one, okay? Just because it's not creating or keeping track of stuff, So this is going to be, if you do not want side effects, this is telling the reader of the code that you do not want the side effects, okay? Here, you have to maybe look around. Here, you know for certain that there's no side effects, so nothing to check. But in Ruby, we have a predicate to check for the substring, okay? Okay, normally I use this one, but I have to admit that perhaps this reads better. So it's like a trade-off, okay? So normally I prefer this one because I think in this conciseness, sorry. So this is just a string inclusion, which is exactly what I want to express. And the reader of the code is what it's going to read, okay? A string exclusion, nothing else to think about. But I have to admit that maybe this one is easier to read. So often there's no like a clear winner. Like there are pros and cons, and you have to choose one, depending on your your style or your preferences or whatever. But oftentimes it's not like 100% pros and zero cons. Also, even if this is doing a bunch of things, if you see this often enough, your brain does not parse this as a regular expression, generic regular expression matching anymore. So if you are exposed to this idiom enough, then you parse this as a chunk, all right? And you are seeing here a string inclusion. And people whose languages only allow string substring predicates to be written this way, in the end, if you write in this kind of languages, if you see if something like this, your brain, if you are like a proficient programmer of that programming language, no longer sees this as individual things, like computing the index of, comparing to this because the API says that -1 something, If you are exposed enough to this, I think you process this in one shot. So apparently it's more verbose, but in practice, I don't think it is. Because in practice, you process this as one chunk. Okay, this is a redundant self that in Ruby are not idiomatic. So just do not write that kind of selves. This one is interesting. I see this. So this one is less common. This one is more common. So this would be like a singleton class or something, Okay. More common to see new with a self. And this is as redundant as the previous one because new is not special in Ruby. It's just is a regular method. So the same way you do not need a self in response body, the same argument applies to new because it's not special. So why put self here and not here? Maybe you come from other programming languages where new is a keyword, and it creates a mismatch in your head if you see the new, a bare new, bare new. I don't know, could be. But the reality is that this, you see it, and this one is by far the most common one I see. This is the most redundant self I see out there, which is in active record. If you have a model with an ID, okay, this is a method that is computing something, all right? So this is as redundant as the previous ones because ID is just a method, okay? So why, so here, name is a method. Why, so the person writing this, why does it put a self here and not a self here in the same line? Why? I don't know. And maybe this is so short that, I don't know, maybe give it some presence. I don't know. I don't know what it is. But what? To balance the dots, could be something aesthetically pleasant. I don't know. But yeah, but this happens. I would like to get this guy and ask him, why did you, what is that self there? Okay, and not there. Yeah. All right. Redundant self. But is redundancy perceived in a universal way? So in Ruby, idiomatically, selves that are not needed are considered to be redundant, and you are expected not to write them. This is the way we perceive. We perceive that as a redundancy. Is this universal? Fact, no. Because for Python people, it's the reverse. In Python, you have to write the self. So what we perceive as redundancy, Python guys that have a different color perceive implicitness, and they do not like implicitness. They like it, so they value that it's explicit. Whereas we value, culturally at least, we value that we do not write redundant things. So it's the same fact, but different angles, different points of view about the same thing, you know? And I believe many of these things are cultural, are social. Like you join a community, supposing that the community exists before you join it, you are not creating the language or something. You join a community, and there's expectations, you know, and you are expected, these are the rules of the community. You learn them, you learn what's idiomatic in that community, and you morph to match that kind of thing, normally, you know? Okay, let's talk about readable code. Enjoyable and easy to read. I took this definition online from somewhere. Let's say this thing, return ID unless not name.blank, okay? Blank is a predicate in active support that tells you if a string is either empty or has only white space, okay? Okay. Is this readable? I think it can be improved. Why? Because human beings are bad at doing negations. That's a fact. I don't know, for some reasons, we are not a logical machine. We have a negation, and we have to, you know, to go a little bit more cycles here. So negations, if we can, we get rid of negations. In this particular case, we can write name.present, which is precisely the negation of blank. So just by changing the predicate, you have been able to get rid of this negation. Same code, you have chosen this one over this one to get rid of this negation, okay? To me, this is more readable. And with unless, there's a split. So unless, for me personally, also has a little bit of cost. For me, I don't know, for some reasons, if I see an if, I understand more quickly what that if is doing, and unless, for some reason, makes me think a little bit more, because I am seeing the thing that does not have to happen to do this. And for some people, unless has no cost. I have asked this to some people. For some people, they see, you know, for me it's equivalent in terms of what but for other people, me include, unless has a little bit of cost. So you can turn that in an if. So we get the blank, which is a double negation. We are doing like a double negation, so we get, we have reached the start, okay? So return ID if name blank. Ah, flows, man. Yeah. Unless what? Unless else, yeah, it's true. Yeah, that's. Yeah. I guess Larry, if Larry wrote that one in, you know, in Perl, he was saying like, let's put this shit there. Okay.
The way you compose sentences, and it doesn't make sense, and then as a programmer, it just gives you a headache. But if it was Spanish or
Uh-huh.
another language, you go, yeah, that's how we talk.
All right. Oh man, this hurts my eyes, and I don't know why. It is common that people, you know, write slashes in regex literals this way, okay? And of course, you Perl programmers know that you have alternatives. So Ruby, as you probably know, inherits quite a bit of stuff from Perl, okay? And if you are a Perl programmer, you're going to recognize, oh, okay, this comes from Perl, this comes from Perl, and, you know, some pragmatism that is in the language, I believe, you know. Okay, so in particular, we have alternative syntax to write regular expressions. And if this is maybe too heavy and you are into golf, you can do this kind of thing, you know, to make it a little bit more, you know, to get a better tie or something, okay? So this is more lighter. This is lighter than this one, but maybe it's more funky, I don't know. But not this, man, not this. Use space.
You can use a space, right?
I don't remember.
Yeah.
We should try because it's crazy that it accepts everything. Yeah. Well, precisely to remove that option, there's this question mark that I added on purpose to not be able to do this with start with. But yes, sometimes you could do so. Sometimes you see regex that could be written with start with or end with. Okay. This one hurts me a lot also. This is okay. Let's forget the require. File expand path is taking some absolute point and resolving, you know, the name relative to this thing. Okay, so this pseudo constant has the full path of the current file. All right, and so this is going to do /boot relative to a file name. And it gets me nuts that you have to do, what is .. of a file name? Jesus Christ. I'm used to do .. of directories all my life, you know, but of a file name. So this is loading boot RB in the same directory I am. Okay, so in 1.8 you had to do this. And fortunately, we no longer need to do this because we now have __dir, which is more natural. So from the current directory, boot. Okay, it's better. It's better, okay? But still, this is from 1.9 or 2.0, no, I don't remember. So still, you see this a lot out there. And in the particular case of require, so what we said applies to expand path generally, but in the particular case of require, we have require relative in Ruby, which is even more clear. Yes?
Is that lowercase here over there?
Yeah, it's lowercase. I don't know. I don't know. If you put it in uppercase, it doesn't work. I don't know. But some people, when they refer to this as constants, because a constant in Ruby starts with an uppercase case, and then the convention is that if the constant is like, like a string or a number that you want to save, that's going to be everything uppercase, and a snake case, and everything uppercase. And if the constant is a class name or module name, it's camel case, okay? And some people get confounded and say that this is a constant, and it's false, it's not a constant. For starters, it doesn't start with an uppercase letter. It starts with an underscore, so this is a variable, technically. But in reality, they are special things in the interpreter, so they do not belong to any of these categories. And in some books, they refer to them as pseudo-constants or something like that. And this is clearly, so this is even visually does not resemble a constant to anyone. So I don't know. Maybe that's the reason. But I am guessing. I don't know it. Okay. There's this saying, always code as if the guy who ends up maintaining your code will be a violent psychopath who knows where you live. Yeah, and there's other sayings that say, for instance, the maintainer of this code could be your future self, okay? Talking about maintainable code, readable code, and I believe these are two self-centers for my taste, okay? So they are basically a joke, all right? But they are saying, write better code because it could hurt you afterwards, okay? But that's thinking about you. And I prefer to phrase that thinking about other people, because most of the time, so my code is going to be maintained by someone, okay? So just think about the readers of your code, because you'll be gone someday, you'll be gone, okay? So do it because of them. Readable code, document the fucking whys of the code, of what you do in code comments, all right? I'm sure you have inherited sometimes a project or piece of code where some business logic is, you don't know why is that done. Nobody knows. You do not know if that's, you can remove that or not. And, and since nobody knows how to touch that, so it's going to live, long life cluttering the code, yes?
Do you think it's better to use code comments for this versus like command comments? Do you have an opinion on that?
Yes, I have. So to me, my opinion is I put in commit messages the reason for the patch. That's my personal thing, all right? So I put in commit messages the reason for the patch. So it's a comment about the patch itself. But I put in code comments why the code is doing what it's doing. Because when I am reading code, I do not want to go jumping hoods in Git history to understand, and sometimes that's not even trivial. If you start to refactor, rename things, could be I don't know. And also, when I'm reading code, that's the spot where I am looking at the code and I'm wondering, and that's the spot that has the context that I need. So that's my preference. And sometimes the patch and the why overlap. And in that case, I say something like this. If I consider that what I have to put is a code comment, I put the code comment, and then the commit message says, the rationale for this patch can be seen in the code that you can find in the very patch. So since everything is packed, that's not going to be lost never, okay? So you see that, and you see the div, all right, that's the explanation, so I do not repeat it or anything like that. Yeah, so you'll be gone someday, so do this for the next people, because of the greatest of the qualities the programmer can have, in my view, which is empathy, okay? So empathy, you can show empathy in a number of ways. You can show empathy like the way you relate to other people, the way you, review code in GitHub, the way, I don't know, many things. How do you take decisions in a team? But for me, the ultimate expression of empathy in a programmer is the way it performs. If it performs in a way that is taking into account that some other people are going to need to understand that at some point in the future, all right? Okay, I'm digressing. Another topic, order things naturally. For instance, def last name, def first name, okay? Normally, if you are reading source code file for the first time, you go top to bottom. So you get to last name, and your brain goes, wait a minute, where is the first name? Why I'm getting this last name? So if you write just like the natural ordering of things, it flows better. This is another one. This is a timestamps. Deleted that, created that, updated that. These are very common in active record, okay? Okay, so that's not the natural cycle of an entity. The natural cycle is that you create it, maybe you modify it, maybe you delete it. That's the natural order. So in my view, this flows better, right? This is another one. You get 3 parameters here, and for some reason this guy wrote them, the assignments are in a different order. Yeah, so maybe the reason is that maybe originally this method had 2 parameters, the port was added, and then the guy goes and just edits the first line. I don't know, the reason could be whatever, okay? But the fact is that you see this, and then you have to, in your head, build a matrix of, okay, I have the port, okay, port, and and do this thing. But if this flows, again, okay, this flows. It's easier for your brain to go protocol, host, port, okay, done. But as I've said, sometimes there's a tension here between conciseness and readability. For instance, this is constructing a user object with these 2 attributes, name and email, that come from some hash table, okay? Args, name, email. Okay, so we have here some repetition, right? We see repetition here. We see that we are repeating args, name with name, so we start checking there's a typo or something, let's check, okay, email looks good, okay, I didn't copy paste name here, you have to check a number of things. In Ruby, there's a more concise way to write this, which is, well, with active support extends hash to have this slide method, which is similar to what you explained before. So this slice is telling, give me a subhash that has name and email, which is the subhash I need, okay? These 2 are not really equivalent. They are not, formally they are not equivalent because a slice, this is a parenthesis, a slice gives you the subhash with these keys unless, so with these keys if they are present in the original hash. So if for instance, if the original hash has name but does not have email, the subhash is not going to have email nil. It's only going to have name, okay? Whereas this method call, new is going to receive for certain 2 keys. So this is a formal distinction, but often it doesn't matter. Let's suppose it doesn't matter, okay? All right, so let's suppose this is equivalent in practical terms. This is concise. This is telling, I want these 2 keys, I want a subhash with these 2 keys, and it's going to pass a hash with, everything is compacted here. But there's tension, I believe, because this, I believe, is a little bit more obscure. So this has repetition, but man, you understand it clearly, first sight. And I believe this makes you think a little bit more. I don't know, more questions than answers. I don't know, Easier to update, yeah, okay, agreed, yeah.
Name and email could be a keyword argument. You would not use the other one.
Yeah.
But you could refactor it in the, like if you write it in the first way, you could refactor it into keyword arguments. If you do it the other way, and there's something like an options hash.
Yeah, could be. Yeah, so I see this pro, I see this pro for me, you know?
It's opinions, right?
Yeah.
And we're missing a comma.
Okay, another one that shows this tension. This is supposed to be within a method called super, gets supposedly an option hash that is modified in place, and this is returned. That is the idea, okay? So in Ruby, there's an idiom to do exactly this, which is tap. Tap says, I'm going to, it's a triviality, but it adds, it's intention revealing. So taps is it's very trivial. So it takes the receiver, we call this guy the receiver in Ruby terminology, passes it to the block. So I don't know, no magic here, just is passing this value here, okay? Then you can do here whatever you want. Normally you modify in place this guy if you can, but you can do whatever you want here. And when the block ends, tap is going to return this guy. So if you modified it in place, good. Okay, this is more intention revealing, because to the reader of this code, when you start doing this, you are set. You already know that you are going to do stuff, but that's the thing that you're going to return. It's automatic. You see it, okay? And then you understand what this does. So in here, you have to infer it. You read the code, options. Okay, I'm going to return this first thing. You have to infer it, okay? But some people prefer this over this, because this is straightforward. And this, for some people, not me, I prefer this one. But I know some people, and some like very, knowledgeable Ruby programmers that say, yeah, I know tap, but I don't want to use it. I prefer being more straightforward, like this one, okay? So conciseness versus readability versus personal ways to interpret things. All right, let's talk about being precise, okay? Exact and accurate in all its details. For instance, this is an experiment I did with Active Record. In some versions, we had our feature that I wrote, which was that when queries were generated, we monitored the time they took, and if the time was over some threshold, you get a warning in the log. All right, that was the thing, a warning, and you had the explain written in the log. So we run explain against the database, and you got the explain right there. Okay. Okay. So this was like a little experiment I did, which was to, instead of doing this, I named the config parameter like this, because oftentimes the unit is not in the name. So what I find is that when a programmer is going to configure this, it's obvious the unit. The unit is obvious. Threshold in seconds. Otherwise, you often need to go to the API, double check. It was microseconds, what it was, obvious. And when you are reading the implementation, whenever this happens, when you are reading the implementation, if you have to compare with something, what you are doing, without relying on memory. It's longer, it's more verbose, but I don't know. Has many comments talking about preciseness. When I do a code review, this is one of the things that I check. I grep the project for has many without dependent. And normally this is orphan records. So in active record, has many comments, unless you say something. When you delete this model, which could be a post, for instance, in the canonical example, if you delete the post, the comments are left there. There's nothing happening with the comments, so they become orphan, all right? So when you write a has many or an association has one, whatever, you have, every time you write that macro, you have to take a conscious decision about what is going to happen when we delete the model. Always, you have to say something. So there's this option that has a number of things. And what I, in practice, write most of the times is I don't do this in active record at all, most of the times. So normally I do it in the database. So I configure a foreign key constraint, and the foreign key constraint has a cascade delete. So I am, for certain, the database is going to do the cascade delete, and that's going to be, fast, because if the delete all is not often, normally you say here destroy. So if you put here destroy, which is the most common thing, then the post has to load all the comments to destroy them. And if you have, other descendants, you have to load those objects in memory to delete all of them and call, and call callbacks and that kind of thing. And that is useful if you have callbacks, but in my experience, destroy callbacks are not very common. They are not very common. So most of the time, you can delegate all the work to the database. Delete post, bam, everything, in cascade. In that case, then it's going to look like this, but you have to do this work in the database. Yes, that's what I normally do. Yeah, that's correct.
With a comment? Yeah, a comment in the code or saying this with dependency?
No, I don't write the comment normally.
So you don't write the dependency?
No, it doesn't matter, because when you delete it, the database is going to trigger the in cascade.
For example, if you write in the top of MongoDB, for example, your ODM has to take care of the dependency.
Well, I have a relational database in mind where I can put a foreign key constraint with this option to delete in cascade. So in Mongo, I have no idea. I don't know. Yeah. So yeah. Okay. All right. This one is also about Ruby particular, because in Ruby we have in the standard output constant, we have the original stream from the process. But what you are supposed to use is this global variable. Okay? This global variable, you are allowed and expected to change it as needed. Okay? So this is a constant. The value should not be changed. You can, well, I don't know if this one is particularly protected. But well, Ruby has this thing which is maybe a thin thing of Japanese or something that you can change constants. But okay, let's suppose you don't do that thing. All right, so it has, but this is a standard output, the global variable that has as an initial value the same thing as this, but for instance, in a test suite, you can assign this to this, to this variable, for instance, on a string IO, then you run whatever, then you restore the original value that was here, but then you have in the string IO all the output, and you can assert things about that output, all right? So this is the most idiomatic way to write into the standard streams. Now let's talk about regex. You know this saying, some people, when confronted with a problem, think, I use regular expressions. No, they have two problems. And my take on this is bullshit. And I know I do not need to explain this to this audience. Okay, so this is one gotcha with Ruby, and very, very, very common gotcha with Ruby. Let's suppose this is matching a username or something, is validating something, and you write this thing. But in Ruby, the caret is different from this anchor, all right? because in Ruby, this means matching start of line or start of a string, and this is start of a string. Okay, so you are hacked, you know, if you inject a new line somehow, it's going to match. It's going to match here, but you got this payload here. So use A when you mean A. That's the point in Ruby, okay? And sometimes people may even relax, like, I don't know, if I'm iterating through file names, well, if this is like a quick and dirty script you are writing just in a moment and you know what you are doing and your file system is yours, and I don't know, maybe you can relax. But if this is like a generic library or something like that, then you have to start, okay, got it, but can a file name have a new line? And the point is, do not wonder. If you do not know if a file name can have a new line, just do not write a caret, okay? And indeed, it can have a new line, okay? So just use A when you mean A. Similar thing with dollar, okay? Dollar, you know, is end of line or end of a string with an optional new line, you know, and that corresponds with capital Z, okay? Capital Z. And then we have the assertion, the anchor lowercase z, that means end of a string. And it has similar problems if you misuse it, okay? So indeed, most of the time, what you want is capital A and lowercase z, most of the times. What's the origin I'm guessing, okay? What's the origin of this thing? So that normally, this means start of a string. That's the fact. Unless there's a flag somewhere, you know, that you can pass to opt-in into the multi-line mode. But otherwise, by default, most of the cases, it means a start of a string. It means what in Ruby is capital A. By the way, in Perl also, of course, has capital A. That means, you know, always the same thing. Okay, regardless of the multi-line flag. Okay, and with, you know, with dollar, it's similar. Okay, unless you have a multi-line flag, it acts like capital Z. And this happens in all this kind of, you know, Ruby is an exception in you know, the meaning of the caret and the dollar is common to most of other programming languages. So you are exposed to a lot of regular expressions, and maybe you are yourself used to use the caret and the dollar that way. And if you go to a Stack Overflow, you're going to see regex that written that way. And yeah, so I believe that's the source of the misuse of regular expressions in Ruby. But also, again, I have to admit that maybe this reads a little bit better than this one. Could be, depends a little bit, you know. This maybe is a little bit more clear. I don't know, slightly. But this is the correct one, oftentimes. And this slide is exclusive for this event. And danger, because the flags are reversed in Ruby and Perl. So careful here, okay? So in Perl, if you want the dot to match a new line, you write /s, but you write /m in Ruby, okay? But /m in Perl has another meaning, which is multi-line mode, precisely. In Ruby, there's no flag to opt out of new line mode, multi-line mode. You cannot opt out, okay? So there's nothing that applies here. So M in Perl means something different than M in Ruby. And S in Perl means something different because there's also an S, which I have here to quote the manual because I have not used it never, you know, but it enables, it says that the regular expression literal is using some kind of Japanese encoding, I believe, or Asian encoding. I don't know what it is, but yeah, but it's telling that, okay? So yeah, a mix, a mess, yeah? Say it again?
The slash s
Yes.
comes from the word single. Like
Okay. Yeah, all right.
so it has new lines in it, it's a single line.
All right, yeah, okay.
And Ruby uses /m for multi
Yeah.
to explain the
Yeah. Okay. And now I would like to say some final words about code style, because if you go through the slides, there's no comment about code style, where to put the braces, whether you braces in a method call or not, between the arguments first and last, and a number of things. Because in general, I do not believe there's like more concise, more readable code when with one option or the other. So this presentation does not touch code style, and indeed, I believe largely preferences in code style are just a way of your brain to say that that he is used to parse some kind of a style. So, for instance, there's a school of Ruby called Seattle Ruby. There's a bunch of people called Seattle Ruby that have slightly different rules to format their code. In particular, there's one that for people not used to those rules makes the source code very strange, which is that they do not put, so in Ruby, when you define a method that has parameters, well, doesn't matter. Okay, when you define a method, the parentheses to wrap parameters are optional. So those people write def method name space, first parameter, comma, second parameter, Okay, well, if you see, well, at least when I see, and other people when I see the other people see, okay, I need to conjugate see to see. Okay, that code, your brain explodes, because you are used to parse, your brain is expecting a parenthesis, and you see a space, and you need to start, because the method name is an identifier. And since Ruby does not have sigils, the first parameter name is also an identifier, so it looks the same. So you have to count I don't know, it's no big deal. But the reality is that you see that code and your brain does not parse it. But my point is, I believe that's not something fundamental. That's not something fundamental. I'm sure, I have not done it, but I'm sure that if I need to work in a project that has those code style rules for a couple of months, it is going to be a no-brainer. I'm going to parse that with no problem. Okay? Why? Because my brain is going to develop patterns to match that kind of thing, and I'm going to be done. So it's not something fundamental. I think it's something that it is just the case that you are not used to visually see that kind of layout. So in that sense, I believe that the particular code styles that you choose are not fundamentally important within some reasonable, constraints, but they are not fundamentally important, I believe. What I believe matters the most is that code bases are consistent, at least, that they have some rules. And indeed, this is interesting, because oftentimes you have syntax that is very flexible. For instance, I love Perl syntax, I have to say it, and I was into Perl Golf for some time, and you exploit whatever you can, from that. But you have flexible syntax, and then there's a circle that goes and says, okay, the community is agreeing in these best practices for formatting code. And you start to see code styles, guides, and that kind of thing. So there's a little contradiction here. So we have the flexibility, but then we start to say, this is not idiomatic. You should lay out the thing this way. You have a code style. But then everyone is used to different things. So the code style in this project is a little bit different from that one. And then when you open a source code of an open source library, is going to have peculiarities, because that guy, has little preferences that do not match your preferences. And after all these years, I have to recognize, I see little practical value in all this flexibility in syntax. So in some part of me likes that I can go crazy with the syntax. Some part of me looks backwards or looks, in the past and says, which is the practical value for this? And I believe, for instance, in Go, you know that they are very strict. Like if you do not put, I don't know, some indentation or the braces here, it doesn't compile. Well, to be honest, I believe that's a good decision. Because when you go across code bases in different projects, in different libraries, since fundamentally the details do not matter, you're going to develop patterns in your brain to part that thing, and it's going to be across projects. Is going to look familiar to you.
They also use tabs.
Yeah. Okay. Let's. Okay. Except for the tabs. Doesn't matter, but.
It's not a discussion because you just use go prompt and then whatever is the output of the tool
Yeah.
is the correct one.
That's right. There's no discussion. Done. This is done. There's no discussion. Okay. So let's program. Okay. And the choices are reasonable. In a sense, it reminds me, not the same thing, but it reminds me a little bit of Rails in the sense that when Rails came out, we are talking 2004, something like that. The mainstream selling point of frameworks was flexibility. We are flexible. We do whatever you want. You can mix and match, and because we are super flexible, you just configure this thing, And the Rails was like, okay, you know what? Most of the time, for most of the cases, these particular choices do not matter. So let's take some reasonable choices about namings, conventions, tal, and tal is not English. And these are good conventions. They come from years doing web programming. They make sense. For once, you can then exploit those conventions and get defaults that exploit the conventions, like mapping automatically model classes to tables in the database, something very trivial, but you do not need to map them, It's inferred because of the conventions and a number of things, all right? So it was like, for a number of things, we believe that most of the time, not everyone, not every time, but most of the time, these particular, little details do not matter. So let's go with these ones. And when you switch from project to project, if you switch from one Rails project to another Rails project, and I switch it to a lot of projects, you have a lot of knowledge already, in place. I know how is this going to work. Then maybe this guy has decorators, maybe that guy has service objects, little things. But you do not have to learn how the team has built this ad hoc framework that you have to do with other things. Okay, so I see a parallel here with Go, in the sense that I'm guessing again, but I am in speculation mode, so I can do it. Maybe the reasoning is, look, fundamentally this does not matter. So let's make some choices. The creators or the people that define the programming language are the ones that have to discuss, period. There's no more discussion. And then when you are in a team and when you go project by project, the same way with Rails, you are set in the same in the sense of organization and libraries and kind of thing. In Go, I believe it's going to happen with source code, that you are going to go project through project, and visually is going to look the same. I think that's a good point. I think that's good. That's a good decision. Very unconventional. I do not know any other programming language that is so strict with syntax. I don't know. But yeah, but I think I think it's a good choice. And okay, that's it. Right. Yes. Do we have?
I just wanted to ask your opinion about lifters and stack checkers. Do you actually use them as enforcement in your projects or?
Yeah, good question. So I believe that the particular rules you choose do not matter, But I believe that it matters that you have a consistent layout in in one given project. So I have to do a hat tip here to the Rubocop guys, because Rubocop is more and more used in projects, and I believe that's a good thing. So the difficult part is that the team agrees on the rules of Rubocop. That's the difficult one. That's the social one, okay? But if you get, beyond that point, it's good, because then, indeed we did this in Rails recently. In Rails, I saw that the source code, this was a particular initiative of me. The source code was diverging. So in some file you had like, this style, you use single quotes unless you need double quotes, for instance, I prefer that kind of a style. In some files this was used, in other files it wasn't. In some files it was mixed, and a number of things, all right? So my proposal was, let's agree in some rules. I do not care, not care, any rules. Let's agree on some rules and then enforce them, okay? And now we have a Rubocop configuration, not very, it doesn't have a ton of rules, the ones we wanted to concentrate on. And then Rubocop runs against pull requests. So something that cannot happen is that the reviewer has to check for conventions being followed, but that's not going to work. That's not going to work. And so there's the problem of the manual inspection that is going to fail, and there's the problem of social communication, because if someone has worked in a hard patch, for me, it's not a problem to say, can you please format this differently? But for some people, it's not easy. Like they do not find, the courage to say to someone that has worked to do this little addition that, in the way they perceive is different. For me, it doesn't matter, But for some people, it's even easier from the point of view of the maintainer that that something that is failing. So the contributor says, oh, this is failing, so I'm supposed to make this pass. And there's no one telling, could you make it pass? It just goes automatically, more or less, Yeah, so consistency and enforcing with Rubocop, I think they are good things.